shik'éí na hallelujah na shang halang na shik'éí na. Yá'át'ééh to all my good shidine'é relatives out there on the Navajo Nation between Shidine'é our boundaries of our home of the great Navajo Nation. Say yá'át'ééh to all of you. Believe it or not, my relatives, I do know how to speak English. You've heard me on the radio so many times, even on Facebook, and I've been talking fluent Navajo. I didn't speak English until I was like in the second grade. Navajo is my first language. And so when my mother and my father took me to school, I was speaking Navajo predominantly. And until I was in the second grade, I learned how to speak English a little bit more appropriately or grammatically correct, you could say. And so I'm going to speak to you in English here today, and my good relatives, to give you just a slight insight of who Justin Jones is. Who is he? Where is he from? I hear a lot of those questions. What is he all about? Things like that. I'm from and I have a problem with trying to translate my clans, and so I'm not going to do that because I feel that the English language just doesn't give it justice when you try to translate certain Navajo terms. But and those are my four clans. And I have a mother and a father. They reside in Rock Point, Arizona. My father's name is Johnny Jones, and my mother's name is Betty Rose Jones. And they've resided there for the past 60 years. They will be married 60 years this coming year. And so they've been together for 60 years, and where our homestead is, that's where the home has been for about 60 years. And so that's where I grew up, in Rock Point. And I went to school at Rock Point Community School. It's they say, they call it that. And they call it that for a reason, because the instruction and the curriculum, it's done both in the Navajo language and both in and also in the English language as well. So that kind of a bilingual, bicultural educational setting is where I went to school at. And so it has been good, and I graduated from there in 1985. And I've been to a lot of graduations recently. And the graduating class that we had was only 14 students. That's all we had as a graduating class. But nevertheless, I feel that it was a very good high school education, or first through 12th grade education, that I had at Rock Point Community School. Have many fond memories of that place. And so after that, just going to school at a very small community, even a community school. At the time, we weren't even part of a sports class like 1A or anything like that. It was just a small reservation school that we had. But the curriculum was very demanding. The curriculum was very grueling, because the locals, relatives that were on the school board demanded that. They demanded that we be challenged in so many ways. And so the school was structured like that. And I think that because of that, I began to wonder what it would be like to challenge myself and attend maybe even an Ivy League school. So my senior year, I applied to Stanford University, and I got in. I got accepted. And my father and one of my uncles, they loaded me up one day, and they bought me a bicycle, and we drove nonstop to Palo Alto, California. And when we got there, it was just an amazing place. It was almost bewildering, you could say, in a way. And it was very intimidating as well. And so when I got there, we unloaded, and I got introduced to my roommate. And my father gave me $50 because that's all he could spare. He said, "Son, I'm going to give you $50. I want you to make this last for as long as you can. And I said, okay, Dad. And they left right after they unloaded because he had to work. And so there I was, a shidine'é young man from Rock Point, Arizona, on this major United States university. And so I didn't realize that some of my dorm mates or classmates thought of $50 as like quarters to them. It was nothing to them because they were very rich. But nevertheless, that's where I was for about 3 years of my life, going to school. And as it turns out, it was very expensive. And so when that time came, I couldn't get any other funding. My father couldn't afford it. We couldn't really afford it. So I decided that it might be best to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. And before I did that, then I talked it over with my parents, and at the time, my paternal grandfather, shidine'é, was alive, and I used to spend a lot of times with him. I learned a lot of prayers and songs and ceremonies from him. And he thought it would be good that I was going to go to school like that, and he supported me. So right around that time, he passed. He went back into old age. And so it was up to me to try to keep a lot of the prayers and the songs that he taught me going as well. And so coinciding with my enlistment, I went ahead and went to the Marine Corps. And right around that time, about a year in, we got deployed to the Persian Gulf during the Desert Shield, Desert Storm era. And it was very, very challenging to me in so many ways. But what was unique about it was the fact that the way that I was brought up. I was brought up with no electricity. I was brought up with no running water, no indoor plumbing, and we had to haul wood. There were times when we had to go after coal as well over at Black Mesa. And predominantly, we were busy with flocks of sheep and horses that were there. Then in the summer times, down in the valley of Rock Point, then there would be planting. And so those were the responsibilities. And it was in a way, kind of in a harsh way as well, because the disciplining was very much in tune with that kind of a lifestyle, because you had to get up early. You had to be outside, even in the dead of winter. You had to be tending to, especially in the early part of the winter, February, March, when the sheep were lambing. You had to go out there maybe twice, 3 times a night to check on them, to make sure that if there were lambs, you had to bring them back in. Things like that. And my upbringing was also ceremonially based too. A lot of time was spent going to ceremonies, whether it was a blessing way ceremony, 5-night ceremony, 9-night ceremony, or even it would be a peyote ceremony as well. Those were the way that I was brought up. And so they didn't really leave enough time to do anything else like sports or anything like that. But I did run high school track, cross country, basketball at the time. So that was the kind of an upbringing. So today I always say that in Navajo, I always say that it's good to have smell like sheep manure. It's good to have smell like goat piss and have hay in your hair, and from just a livestock surrounded by farming and just a good res kind of a upbringing. That's how I grew up. And so all that disciplining and all that upbringing that really helped when we were in the Persian Gulf. I always tell the story. One time there was a guy from Kayenta and there was a guy from Dilkon that we were all closely deployed. And we would have goggles. We were given goggles, and it would blow like crazy out there, just sand all over the place. And our fellow Marines would be wearing goggles, and we would be without goggles, and we'd be carrying on. And they would tell us, "How come you don't wear goggles?" And so we would joke and say, at home, this is normal to us. We don't need goggles. Our eyes are used to this. And so we would say that. But that was good. After my service, I came home and then I got married. I got married traditionally. My mother and my father went over to my in-laws and they expressed their desire for me to be married to their daughter, and they brought some dowry as well, and they made their arrangements. And so one day they told me that they set this date to have a wedding. And so I came back from the service and to do that. And so that was maybe about 30 years ago. Thereafter, we had 3 children. Our first child is a son. He's graduated from college from the University of Oklahoma. And we have a daughter also. She is a junior at the University of New Mexico. And our youngest son, he is over at Diné College. And so we have 3 full-grown children that I believe that we didn't do a bad enough job as far as instilling something good in them and disciplining them. So today, like for my sons, they follow me when I do ceremonies, when I tend to my patients and other things like that. Same way with my daughter. My daughter was the former Miss Indian New Mexico here about 2-3 years ago. And so she does a lot of that, but she is majoring in construction management because she feels that she wanted to pursue that because her uncles are contractors just as well as myself and my son. We started a contracting business as well. So she wanted to help us like that. And that's what we do here today. And then when I got married and when we have kids, then I went to school after I did not finish at Stanford. I came home and I was married now. I had children now. And it was best and it was appropriate to be around home, as well as the fact that I was pursuing and I was undertaking and carrying out some of the ceremonies that my grandfathers left me with. So that was my responsibility to undertake that and tend to my patients and tend to my ceremonies. And so we had to be nearby. So we ended up enrolling at Fort Lewis College. So we ended up enrolling, my wife and I ended up enrolling at Fort Lewis College, and we both graduated from there. And after that, I pursued an education degree again. And so that's what I did. I taught high school, and I taught Navajo language, Navajo culture, Navajo government, Navajo civics, different things. And I eventually worked my way to becoming an administrator of schools. And I ran schools for a while. And during the Albert Hill administration, my Nully, my paternal grandfather, that's how he was related to me, the late Albert Hill, he asked me if I could be his division director for the Navajo Division of Education, and I said that I would be honored to do that. So I held that job until he resigned. Nevertheless, I pursued more work in the educational field for a while, and then I decided to go to law school, which I always intended to do when I was an undergrad. I enrolled in several schools, but I really wanted to attend a school that had American Indian law, Native American Indian law programs. And so the second criteria I picked was that whoever was going to give me the best scholarships, that would be where I would go. And as it turns out, the University of Kansas gave me a lot of money. They also had a tribal law and government program, a certification program. And it all worked out. So I resigned one day from my principalship, and then we all packed up and we all moved out there. And we lived in Lawrence, Kansas for 3 years. And my children were young at that time. And so as a father, as a mother, we both undertook the responsibility of being parents. But I took on the responsibility of studying and going to class and all of that. And so it was a good experience for all of us. It kind of taught us how to be self-reliant in so many ways when you have children, to be non-traditional students. And I graduated from law school, And so today, I always say, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, national champions. And so today, I practice law. I have a law firm here in Farmington, New Mexico. I've been practicing law here for about over 20 years now. I don't work for anybody. I work for myself. I have clients here in New Mexico, Arizona, and I also have clients out all the way up to North Dakota, Oklahoma, and then the other tribal courts as well. Apaches, the Southern Utes and the Ute Mountains and the Utes in Fort Duchesne, Utah, and different places. And so I think that we've built a pretty good clientele here in the law firm that we have here. But predominantly, we serve a lot of Navajos simply because I'm fluent in Navajo. And I've been dealing with Navajo issues in so many ways for so long. So one of the reasons why that I believe that I've declared my candidacy is that I see so many things for so long with Navajo law and Navajo government and different parts and facets of our tribal governmental operations and the sub-governments like the local chapter governments and other things. And so I think that has given me an opportunity, my gosh, over 20 years of looking at this, talking about this, trying to resolve some of these things. And so I think it has given me a good grounding of what some of these things are entailing, some of these issues that are there before our people. So today, I predominantly tend to my family, and I predominantly go and tend to my ceremonies, or I attend ceremonies. And sometimes I travel far and near for that. And I've made a lot of relationships, made a lot of relations, different good people that I've met along the way. And then also in the powwow world also, I spent a good time of my undergrad with my wife and I, and we used to dance and we used to get on the road and go compete. And that's how we paid our way through undergrad as well. And so we made a lot of good friends and good relationships with a lot of good people on that road as well. So today, that's predominantly what my lifestyle is. I hardly go to any major rodeos, or hardly, I don't even gamble. I don't find any use to go to a casino or anything like that. So I'm usually home. But one thing I would love to do is I like to go to a good movie. I'm a movie buff. And we have Top Gun coming up here pretty soon. And so I'm looking forward to that. And we have Jurassic Park coming up too. So I'm a big movie buff. I love to go to movies. It's not only the movies, but the salt and the popcorn. That's really good. And I love to go have some good food too. Good conversation over food, over some good coffee. I don't drink. I'm drug-free. And that's predominantly what my life is today, my relatives. So it's been delightful to address all of you, my good relatives, using my second language, the English language. And I thank you. Yeah.